Donald Trump's campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, charged with misdemeanor battery over an incident with former Breitbart reporter Michelle Fields at a campaign event earlier this month. Fields filed charges alleging Lewandowski forcefully grabbed her arm while she attempted to ask Trump a question. Lewandowski's attorney says his client is absolutely innocent and is completely confident he will be exonerated. Both sides say this video you're watching right now benefits their case individually. Trump is adamantly standing by his aide.
Corey's a fine person. I looked at the tape, but the tapes were supplied by me. Tapes to me are very conclusive. A lot of people are looking and saying, how can anybody be charged? She was actually, if you look at her, in my book, and according to a lot of people, she's grabbing at me. And he's acting as an intermediary and trying to block her from doing that. The news conference was over. It was done. It was finished. And she was running up and grabbing and asking questions. It's very unfair to a good person. He's got a family. He's got 4 beautiful children. I think it's very, very unfair to a man with a wonderful family back in New Hampshire who gets, what, a criminal situation over that?
More now from Chief Political Correspondent Carl Cameron. Carl, this is quite disruptive to these campaigns, is it not?
Well, it doesn't come at a time that Donald Trump would like, but this sort of thing never could. But Donald Trump and Corey Lewandowski have argued from the very beginning that nothing ever happened, that there was no assault, there was no battery, and that this is completely overblown and, frankly, an attempt to smear Donald Trump by going through his staff, what Ted Cruz has called his henchmen in the last few days. The video does show Corey Lewandowski and the former Breitbart reporter Michelle Fields engaged next to Donald Trump. The laws of Florida say any unauthorized, any unwanted touching can be construed as a possible simple battery or misdemeanor battery. And it has already become a major distraction in this very important state of Wisconsin, where Donald Trump is making his very first campaign appearance. He'll be doing so in Janesville, Wisconsin, the home of the House Speaker Paul Ryan, as both John Kasich and Ted Cruz are campaigning across the Badger State and now making an issue of this, saying that, in short, it comes from the top and there's a culture of violence and hostility in the world of Trump. Listen.
It's a very sad development, and this is the consequence of the culture of the Trump campaign, the abusive culture. When you have a campaign that is built on personal insults, on attacks, and now physical violence.
I can only talk about what I would do. We probably would suspend somebody, and it would depend what it is and what the evidence was. But when we see things that we think are inappropriate, we take action.
In fact, John Kasich's senior political advisor said if it was somebody who had done something like that on their campaign, he probably would have been fired by now already. Eric?
All right. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate the update. Okay, we'll bring it around the table here a little bit. Ebony, Carl mentioned in Florida any unauthorized touching could be simple misdemeanor battery.
Yeah.
That's not a very high bar to clear.
No, it's not, Eric. It's an intent crime. It's a misdemeanor, so not a felony we're talking about. And here's what we know. Certainly, this
it's an intent crime. Meaning
it is
there has to be some intent?
There has to be some intention behind it, and this is where it gets interesting, right? I'm going to circle back to this. Let me just legally geek out for 1 second here. Okay, so Corey hasn't been convicted. He still has his day in court. He's innocent until that time that he's proven guilty. But I want to say this. We know for the fact that law enforcement has actually brought charges now, criminal charges, that they had to have probable cause, because you can't bring charges without it. Probable cause, that's a different standard of proof than beyond a reasonable doubt. It says more probable than not, 51% likely, I'll say, that indeed he did the crime alleged. Law enforcement, they released a statement, and they said they relied heavily on the video provided by the Trump organization, okay, and it looked very similar to Michelle's account of what happened. They take those together with other eyewitness testimony, and they find probable cause. So that's why we have at least charges at this point. Now, when it comes to defense, what are they going to argue? Because the tape looks, for many people, like, okay, there's a clear touching there. You argue the intent, Eric. You say, well, maybe I brushed up beside her, maybe I even grabbed her, but this was the reason why. It was not to harm or damage her. Corey's got a little bit of a problem from a defense standpoint. To me, if he was my client, I would be frustrated with the tweet that he sent out immediately following the event that said, I didn't touch her, because now you're denying something that factually looks in conflict.
Dana, what the optics of it right now? What should they be? What should the Trump campaign be doing?
Well, they should have done the right thing from the beginning, which is he should have apologized and then it maybe would not have escalated. But it's never wrong to do the right thing. And apologizing for something like that in the middle of a scrum, I think that would have been possibly acceptable to her. But when the first reaction is to lie about it and say it never happened, and then to try to smear her reputation. I mean, Donald Trump just said in his interview on the plane that it's unfair to Corey Lewandowski. Well, why is it fair to Michelle Fields to smear her reputation? She lost her job. Or she resigned, but it was basically because Breitbart didn't back her up. There are other things that she lost out on. The other thing from an optics standpoint is if you're the Trump campaign and you know that you have a vulnerability with women and your numbers with women are going down, one, your instincts were to smear a young woman. Two, is to lie about it. And three now is to suggest that she's still in the wrong. I would say at this point you should cut your losses because your track record of the last month with women is not going to get any better if this kind of things continues.
Greg?
Yeah, I mean, if this were The Apprentice, Donald Trump would have fired Corey before he fired Kevin Jonas. That's how bad Corey is. I mean, so it tells you that Trump somehow has standards that are higher for a TV show than he has for his own presidency. Back in Iowa, I expressed outrage over Corey Lewandowski's intentional intimidation of people at Fox News, the threats he was making. You better do this or watch out. I saw this as a problem. And it was a problem for me because Donald Trump speaks about his goals of only hiring the best people around him. And who's around him? This thug? Who's around him? Omarosa? I mean, let's be honest. He does not know what good people are. And you're right. He should do something. He should do something now. Remember, Donald didn't yank her. It's not Donald who did it.
Right.
It's the person who works for him. He should distance himself from him. And one last thing. I think it all could have been avoided through actual conversation between two people. The problem is, people now go on Twitter. So Michelle went on Twitter and her boyfriend went on Twitter. But they went on Twitter because who revolutionized going on Twitter for grievances? Donald Trump. That's where he fights his battles, are on Twitter. So that's where she went. It was a flurry of demeaning behavior from the Trump camp. They should have just said, hey, it was a mistake, that mistakes happen, and it all could have been avoided. But instead, they forced her hand, because as she said on Megyn Kelly, she did not want to press charges. But when somebody calls you delusional, when says you make up stuff, calls you a liar, which Trump did, then you have no choice but to press charges to prove that you are sincere. And the conclusive proof is in that video. It's in that video.
So are you pointing the finger at Corey Lewandowski or
Yes.
Donald Trump?
I think if Trump doesn't act, then it's on him. And he's got to show that
But he already has.
Yeah, I know. That's the sad thing. But he has he should, if he wants to be president, you have to have the temperament. You can't have thugs around you.
Right.
You can't.
Let me ask you this, Jed, respond to that if you want. But do you remember about 6 months ago, it was a Rubio campaign advisor who punched a Rand Paul campaign person in the face on tape. They had it. And it was the state of Michigan, and Michigan dropped it because there wasn't enough there.
They
didn't find deny it, though?
Right. Yeah.
No,
It was on tape.
Yeah,
nobody lied.
This is on tape.
But the problem here is you have a guy running for president who's the front runner who's backing up a guy who lied. I mean, Corey said he didn't touch her. At one point, I think he said he never met her, he never touched her. So once he's put that out there, and that is determined to be a lie, I don't understand how Donald Trump isn't apologizing, because he obviously believed someone who told a lie. That's not what we're seeing on tape. There's footage of it. And at this point, from a political perspective, this guy is a huge liability. This does not help Donald Trump. I don't care about those people who are retweeting him and saying, yeah, Donald. Anyone with eyes who sees the video knows that this guy lied and you're backing him up. So you want to be a big man and say, you know what, this is not the story I heard, this is not how it went down, and have the guts to fire this guy, because obviously he doesn't have the guts to resign himself.
Would anyone disagree with Corey Lewandowski now saying, you know what, it was busy, it was a media scrum, I was trying to get the candidate out.
Where's the apology then?
So if he said, in the aftermath, I saw the video, you know what, it happened, I apologize, would that...
The lawyer be freaking out, Eric. At this point, it's too late for that. At this point, nothing, he can't make a statement like that. That would be in his legal disinterest. At this point, he needs to have his day in court and argue a lack of intent around the contact at that point.
Wouldn't that be arguing the lack of intent? Look, I didn't realize I didn't mean to hurt her. I just trying to get the
but he's got to do that now in a courtroom.
He's got to do it in court.
But he already said in his own words that he never met her, that she's delusional, that she's a liar. I mean, basically...
And the prosecutors are going to rip him for that.
Yeah, so how can you now apologize? I mean, you've already You've been charged with a misdemeanor crime.
He had a chance to apologize. And I mean, once she tweeted out, she obviously had bruises. I mean, there was a space of time, I think, where this guy could have come out and said, you know what, I didn't realize that I injured you. That was not my intent. I apologize. You don't come out and try to slander somebody's reputation and say you never met them, when in fact, yeah, you did. You grabbed her arm and she was damaged as a result of it. This does not look good for him, and I'm sorry it doesn't look good for Donald.
Politically, real quick, I think there's no upside to keeping Corey. That's what's weird to me.
Exactly.
There's only downside. If I'm Donald Trump, to Greg's point, you disconnect, you distance yourself. As we were saying earlier, I'd rather cut off a toe than have to cut off a leg later.
All right, let's do the politics on this.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's huge. Both of them want to. If Donald Trump nails down Wisconsin, his path is clear. If he doesn't, Ted Cruz can make a case that it's less clear. Will this affect Wisconsin?
Well, I don't think it helps. I don't know how much people will necessarily be paying attention to it. And Donald Trump's there trying to talk today about jobs and the economy. One of the things that you want in a campaign is you want like a clear runway so that you can focus on your message, and you should focus relentlessly on jobs and trade if you're going to be in Wisconsin. But if you're spending half the time on your interview on your fancy plane talking about how your campaign manager, this poor guy with this beautiful family, has been attacked unfairly, while this other part of the story is that a young woman was attacked unfairly by the campaign, then that's probably not good. And I also think that Republican women, the numbers, I don't know exactly what they are in Wisconsin, but I believe that they track with the national numbers. The Republican women, about 37% were saying, okay, he could be our guy in the future. That was down to 24% in March. So early March, and now, so it's March 29th, 30th. I don't think it's headed in the right direction.
But the other thing, too, is if you think about people who, the team sport ideology of sports, you know, of politics, once you are all in on something, it's almost impossible to change your mind, because then emotionally you have to admit that you're wrong. So the genesis of this story was that, you know, it didn't happen. It did happen, but it might have been the wrong guy who grabbed her. How could it happen? There's no tape. Oh, there's tape, but it was nothing. Wait, new tape shows that it's more than nothing. Well, then maybe she deserved it because of the scrum of the reporters. No matter what happens, there will always be a strong, vocal, supportive group of Trump supporters who will say, eh.
Yeah, but you know what? A lot of those people, what bugs me is a lot of people supporting Trump. If this were President Obama, one of the key issues, though, was that President Obama doesn't know how to say, I was wrong. And guess what? They're right about that. When he makes a mistake, or he makes a misjudgment, or he speaks too soon on something, whether it involves police or whatnot, and you find that out, you want to say, why can't you just say I had it wrong? Have some humility. Right. Yeah. So that's, you know what? Demand the same thing from the guy who has values that you admire, who has economic policies that you admire. You can't have one set of rules for the guy whose politics differ from yours and another set for the guy whose politics are the same. Demand the same standard across the board.
Absolutely.
Final thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an opportunity, right, for Donald Trump to kind of demonstrate the leadership. You use the Apprentice example. He's the guy that can make the hard decision. This is a hard, difficult decision. I understand there's a temptation maybe on the Trump camp to show loyalty to his person. But, you know, do the right thing. Do the thing that makes legal sense and really the politically savvy thing if it's not about doing the right thing.
All right, we got to go.